The Art of Being Ruled. Wyndham Lewis. Original publication 1926. 1989 edition. Narrated by Skeptical Waves. Part 13. Beyond Action and Reaction. Chapter 6. The Politics of the Intellect. That when I am speaking of the intellectual I evidently experience no shame, reflecting on the compromising nature of my own occupation, that I do not pretend to be a plain, blunt man, is true. Far from that, it is my effrontery to claim that men owe everything they can ever hope to have to an intellectual of one sort or another. And that is true both of the business magnate and his meanest employee. I claim further that the intellectual is the only person in the world who is not a potential capitalist, because his capital is something that cannot be bartered. What he deals in, even when it gives him power, gives him no money. For this splendid and oppressed class nothing is done in the social revolution. But that it is a refuge for the scum of every other defeated class, or any class temporarily lying low, is true. And it is no doubt the great mass of pseudo-artists, writers, and so forth who discredit it. Therefore, when the agitator hurls his abuse at the intellectual, if he would be more specific and pick out the sort of figures that abuse the shelter of the too hospitable intellect, he would be doing a service. The intelligence suffers today automatically in consequence of the attack on all authority, advantage, or privilege. These things are not done away with, it is needless to say, but numerous scapegoats are made of the less politically powerful, to satisfy the egalitarian rage awakened. The intellect, so exposed, so helpless in such a case, suffers most of any category, which is a danger to all of us. It is our own brain we are attacking, while the stomach looks on and laughs to see such sport. The possession and exercise of intellectual power in no way affects a person to a class enjoying political ascendancy. There is nothing aristocratic about the intellect, its noticeable simplicity makes it unpromising to look for analogies to it in a complex society at all. An early society would offer better parallels, and indeed in many primitive communities the chief or leader is chosen as the man known to have the best head. But the word aristocratic, with its implication of a crowd within the bigger crowd, organized for the exploitation of the latter, is peculiarly inapt for the essentially individual character of the intellect. The intellect is more removed from the crowd than is anything. But it is not a snobbish withdrawal, but a going aside for the purposes of work not without its utility for the crowd. The artificial barriers that an aristocratic caste are forced to observe are upheld to enhance a difference that is not a reality. It is because they are of the same stuff as their servants that they require the disciplines of exclusiveness. In the case where an aristocratic regime represents a race ruling as the result of conquest, as has generally been the case, often the aristocrat is inferior in every respect to the subject population that is, except in organization for war. The primitive, democratic, picture of the intellectual leader living his life simply among the people, with admirable simplicity and without fuss, has too many ready illustrations in history to require specification. But this leader claims the authority of the function that he regards as superior to any mechanical dominion of physical force or wealth. Also, it is not for his own sake that he claims it, in this he resembles the king. More than the prophet or religious teacher, he represents at his best the great unworldly element in the world, and that is the guarantee of his usefulness. It is he and not the political ruler who supplies the contrast of this something remote and different that is the very stuff of which all living, not mechanical, power is composed, and without whose incessant functioning men would rapidly sink back to their mechanical origins. The objectionable difference that is such an offense, or can be made to look so, is the very sign by which he should be known and accepted. The life of the intelligence is the very incarnation of freedom. Where it is dogmatic and harsh it is impure, where it is too political it is impure, its disciplines are less arbitrary and less political than those of religion, and it is the most inveterate enemy of unjust despotic power. In its operation it is less violent and more beneficent than religion, with its customary intolerance of emotional extremes. It does not exercise power by terror or by romantic pictures of the vast machinery of judgment and destruction. It is more humane than are the programs of the theological justiciary. And its servants are not a sect nor an organized caste, like the priest or the hereditary aristocrat, but individuals possessing no concerted and lawless power, coming indifferently from all classes, and living simply among other people. And their pride, if they have it, is because of something inside themselves which has been won at no one else's expense, and that no one can give them or remove from them. But if you want to take him at his lowest, there is an intellectual who is the most valuable specialist in the service of capital. The capitalist would have neither machine guns nor aeroplanes nor bombs without this intellectual, for he could not invent these things or anything else himself. The intellectual is thus a worker. What the capitalist does occasionally is to stir up the other workers against this highly salaried, specialist worker. For the intellectual workman in general, it is necessary to claim isolation and freedom from interference, that is, if the best intelligences of the race are to work for us and produce their best results. This greatest and most valuable of all producers should be accommodated with conditions suitable to his maximum productivity. He should not, if that were to be realized, be regarded, and hated, as the great man, but regarded, more scientifically, as the chosen vessel of our human intelligence. He should be no more the object of envy and dislike than Dempsey is because an unmatched gladiator. And he should be relieved of the futile competition in all sorts of minor fields, so that his purest faculties could be free for the major tasks of intelligent creation. It is easy to see how the passing of democracy and its accompanying vulgarities, owing to which any valuable discovery has to fight its way in the marketplace, and the better it is, the bitterer the opposition, must facilitate this putting of the intelligence on a new basis. The annihilation of industrial competition and the sweeping the board of the small man, commercially and socially, should have as its brilliant and beneficent corollary the freeing for its great and difficult tasks of intelligence of the first order. Our minds are all still haunted by that abstract man, that enlightened abstraction of a common humanity, which had its greatest advertisement in the 18th century. That no man in a no man's land, that phantom of democratic enlightenment, is what has to be disposed for good in order to make way for higher human classifications, which, owing to scientific method, men could now attempt. I wish to communicate this view of the world to you exactly as it manifests itself, and so no human opinion will ever be able to get the better of you. Fragment 8. 61. Parmenides.